Okay, hi everybody. My name is Richard.lesperance. I go by the name of my man Richard. Welcome to a better lifestyle. Today I have the pleasure to have Jayla Siciliano. Do I have it right?
You got it. Yep. Good morning.
Good morning. So nice to have you on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is fun. Nice to
It,
connect.
it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So Jayla is a podcast host. She's also an entrepreneur. She's been on Shark Tank, so we'll talk about that. And now she's making big moves in the real estate world. So we'll be talking a little bit about that if we have time. So Jayla, talk to us about your a little bit your experience in regards to Shark Tank.
Oh man, it was one of those things that, looking back, I can't believe I did it. I'm so glad I did at the time. I don't know if I'd want to do it again. With that though, you cannot beat the marketing. So if anybody ever gets the opportunity to go on, it's totally worth it. Amazing show. I think it's really set up, you know, true to what you see. The sharks don't know anything about the companies before you go out there. For me, it was a little bit of a Hail Mary to go on the show. I'd had a lot of issues in my business, and I had already raised money through angel investors and ran into a lot of production issues, and we needed more funding, and we weren't in a good spot to go out and raise more money. And I somehow got on the show and got the deal with Mark Cuban, and it kind of gave my company a second chance. So it was a great experience overall. Working with Mark Cuban was amazing. Great guy in it for the right reasons. But yeah, it's a crazy show. It's definitely an intense experience.
Are there some things you would have done differently?
No, I prepared like crazy for that show. I rehearsed, I practiced answering, questions, Q&A, and I met with people afterwards who were going on the show and who were like, "Oh yeah, it's just a normal investor pitch. I haven't done it really practiced." And I'm like, "Oh my God, you need to practice. Like, you need to rehearse." So no, I feel like I was really prepared, and I almost didn't get the chance to go on the show. I was in LA, I was ready to pitch, and the pitches went over for the day. And I ended up, leaving, and they didn't know if I was going to get another opportunity to pitch again. And I went home, and then they called me a few days later and they said, you have another chance. You might get to pitch tomorrow. Can you be here? And I was like, I'll be there. So I drove up, and because I almost didn't have the opportunity, I kind of ended up going into it like, I'm just going to take a deep breath, be thankful I'm getting the opportunity again, try to enjoy the experience. And I think that actually helped with the nerves quite a bit. So no, there's not much I would change about it. It was a good experience overall.
What are some lessons that you've learned?
I think the biggest lesson that I learned was really post Shark Tank that I think in the startup phase, you spend so much time trying to get people's attention, trying to get your buyers, your customers' attention, investors' attention. And then all of a sudden you go on a show like Shark Tank and you've got everybody's coming to you and you're getting phone calls and, for more opportunity, sales opportunity. And the biggest mistake kind of I made at that point was us trying to say yes to everything and spreading ourselves way too thin. And so I think lesson learned is, staying focused. There's so much valuable. It's so hard to do when all of a sudden you get all this opportunity flowing at you, but not staying focused really was probably one of the biggest mistakes I made with that company.
So how long did you have the business running?
That company about 10 years.
Okay. And why did you pull the plug?
I just got so burnt out. My great grandmother died at 46 of a heart attack. I have heart issues in my family, and I was just sacrificing everything for that company, and it really wore on me. And I was honestly at the point where I was just kind of like numb. my entire life. I was working 16-hour days, almost 7 days a week. While yes, I was doing yoga and trying to, stay healthy. Ultimately, you can eat healthy and exercise, but if your stress level is super high, it doesn't matter. Your body's just not happy. And my husband and I decided, we'd put off having a family. And I also knew, he's always been my biggest cheerleader, supporter. But that kind of, dedication to a company can wear on relationships. And when I'm never available to go to dinner, never available to do things with our friends or go out, over time, that can definitely damage relationships. And I didn't want that. And I saw like 10, 20 years down the road, I wasn't going to be in a good place. So I talked to all my investors. Also, I should note, the company I had, so it was a lighter, healthier wine spritzer that I launched in 2008. This is way before White Claw and all those. So at this point, there was no category for a lighter, healthier alcohol option. It hadn't started yet. So it was like pushing a huge boulder uphill. I was trying to educate like an entire industry on why somebody would want a lighter alcohol. Now there's like zero alcohol everything. It's a huge trend, which I love that it's like finally, all these other options are available to people. But I was at a point where being first is not always best. It's really expensive to educate an industry and an end customer on a new type of category. There was no place for it to sit in the grocery store. It was just on the shelf with all the other wine bottles. Now there's a whole section at Whole Foods for these lighter, seltzers and kombucha, hard kombuchas and all this stuff. So I also saw, this is going to take way too long, way too much money. Now, if I had waited another 3 years, it could have been a different story because White Claw really opened up the market, educated the industry, the end consumer, on having this lighter option. I wouldn't call White Claw healthy at all, but it's a lighter option. But where I was at in 2016, we wanted to start a family. It was just a brutal industry. We were under-resourced, and I was really burnt out. So I talked to all my investors, and they said, it's not for lack of hard work. I think if we had a crystal ball and saw the market was going to, accept that in 2, 3 years, we probably would have stuck with it, but we didn't see that at the time. So I made the decision to kind of wind down operations and transition out. I had a couple buyers lined up. We talk about one of those. I was on the show Beyond the Tank, and we go through all that. But that fell through for certain reasons and ended up just kind of winding it down. It was a very painful process. You put your whole life into a company, and it's like mourning a death. It's really not a fun process to go through. But I did come out of it better on the other side, I will say. So there's a happy ending.
Who should apply to in regards to Shark Tank?
Oh man, I think anybody who needs even a little bit of funding, who needs just a marketing injection, should apply to the show. If you have, really the products they're looking for, if you have a good story and something kind of unique and interesting to, to America, you could say. I think that's who they're looking for. They always said it's 50% business, 50% entertainment. So, if you feel like you have a good story and you can make it an interesting pitch for TV, it's totally worth trying to go on the show. And it can't hurt. You never know. I actually applied. I didn't want to go on the show, but I had an advisor who kept saying, "You need to apply. You should go on. You need to apply." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to apply." And then I was going to meet him for lunch, and I was like, okay, I have to apply just so I can tell him I applied. So I sent the application in, not expecting it to actually go anywhere. But it ended up being like one of the coolest things, that's happened. So you never know. I think it's worth a shot if you've got a consumer product. And you need a little marketing boost and maybe some funding. I think partnering with any of the sharks is a positive. They do way more than just give you the money. So at least everything I've, experienced and other entrepreneurs who've been on the show have experienced.
did you have to give up a lot of equity, and how was the negotiation process?
So again, I was in a really tough spot at that point. I had no sales. I'd already raised a $500,000. I had just gotten the product into a few Whole Foods, but we had no inventory. We lost $100,000 worth of inventory right after I raised that first round. There was only one bottler at the time who would take us, who could produce this product, and they went out of business 6 months later. So I didn't know they were in a downward spiral when they started bottling for us. So I was in a really tough spot. So I went on the show asking for like nothing, 150,000 for I think it was 30%. And again, it was just like a Hail Mary, like it's either this or I'm going to be really giving up a bunch for to investors who don't bring all of the TV exposure and, connections that Mark Cuban brought. So he actually gave me what I was asking for because I think I was fair. I didn't go in there with, ridiculous expectations or inflated valuation. I was pretty realistic with where I was at. I was honest. I said, here's where I'm at. We've hit some huge challenges, and this is what we need. And after that, he was financing inventory runs for us, and we were paying those back. So that was helpful. But it still just wasn't enough money, for how far wide we were trying to distribute. We needed a lot more resources for a category that was really unknown yet at that point.
So you mentioned before that you didn't have sales, if I'm correct. A lot of times investors are looking for a track record of sales before they invest. So what would you say about that to people in regards to that?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. Traction is one of the most important things. So what I did is I had put about 30,000 of my own money in. I worked with an R&D facility in Northern California. They produced some samples for me. I packaged the samples up, made them, look nice presentation. And I went around. I partnered with a guy who was a food and beverage guy, a food critic in San Diego, where I was living at the time. And he introduced me to a lot of big hotels, food and beverage buyers, and I went around, I met with all these buyers, and I basically got letters of intent, LOIs, saying, once you're ready to produce, once you produce it, we'll order. And I went to investors with these LOIs. Like, I've got all these hotels lined up, ready to take the product. I had to pitch Whole Foods. I got denied from Whole Foods twice, and it wasn't until the third time that I met with the right buyer who said they would order. So basically, my traction was really just letters of intent. And I think if you show you've done your homework and you show you have demand there on some level, that can replace sales. Like at that point, I wasn't able to sell the product because it was alcohol and you needed licensing and I needed funding to get the licensing. So that's what I used to prove traction, were really letters of intent from buyers.
How should people prepare in regards to when they want to pitch?
So I recommend, I think one of the things I coach some entrepreneurs on the side in this process, and the hardest part is getting your pitch to be short enough, right? And your story. And so what I recommend doing is record yourself. Just start and see how long it goes. Tell your story, tell your pitch, right? And your goal is to get that down to 10 minutes. You should really have a 2 minute pitch and a 10 minute pitch. I mean, really, you should have like a one sentence, what you do, and then 1 to 2 minute, and then your formal 10 minute pitch. So I had an entrepreneur ask me yesterday, what's the deal with pitch decks? Why are these so important, right? And I think the pitch deck is so important because it's really your first chance at grabbing attention. And if you have too much info in it, if it's too long, if it's confusing, investors are just not even going to give you the time of day. So being concise, it's clarity, simplicity are the two most important things, and it's the two hardest things for entrepreneurs to kind of to do to get to that point. And the only way to get there is really just to keep practicing it and then write it all down. So, I mean, now with like so much technology, record yourself, export the transcript, delete, 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 record yourself again, export the transcript, delete, 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 and then practice it in front of people. And get feedback. I think it's really hard to tell your own story and to capture the right points because we're so close to our story. We don't know, the high, it's hard for us to really pinpoint what those emotional hooks are that we should be talking about and how to talk about them. So I definitely recommend getting feedback. But the most important thing to prepare is to actually prepare. So many people just think I just coached some people for 3 months. We got their pitch deck dialed, their story and everything, and they went to their first investor meeting and they talked the whole time. And at the end, the investor said, wow, you didn't leave me any time for Q&A, and it's okay, it happens, but it's a bummer when you kind of, you waste those contacts because now they haven't heard back from him. So you nerves ramp up in those situations. It's really hard to control what you're saying unless you've rehearsed it over and over and over. So you don't want to be a robot. So it's a fine line. You got to have some natural flow, but you've got to rehearse it. 'Cause otherwise, we all have different, things that come out when nerves are involved. You either talk too fast, you talk too slow, you go off on a tangent, or you just go blank. So anyway, I'd say rehearsing, practicing, and getting it concise is kind of the most important thing to prepare.
Do you think there's an adjustment that should be made? Like, let's say if you're pitching in regards to you're in real estate or you're in tech, do you think there's a difference?
Not really. I think even if you're pitching just a customer, well, I take that back. So when you're pitching your company to raise money, they don't care as much about the actual product. I guess the same as real estate, though, right? They don't really care what the actual, let's say it was a house. You were getting investors just for simple purposes to buy a house. They're not going to care that much if the house is green or blue or red, right? They want to know what's the opportunity for them and how are they going to get their money back and why should they trust you to put their money in. So same thing with your company. I think a mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make is they talk too much about their product and not enough about why are you doing this? What's your background? Why should I give you money? And then what's the opportunity? How do you make money and how am I going to get my money back? Those are the most important things that they want to know, whether it's a real estate deal, a tech product, a consumer product. Whereas if you're pitching an end customer, they want to know about your product. They don't care as much about you. They care about the product. And that's a tough shift to make because entrepreneurs are so used to pitching their product that they kind of have to shift what the focus is when they're pitching investors.
Now, what if someone is dealing with being an introvert?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I'm an introvert to a lot of extent. Like I go to events and I get totally drained. I do not love talking to people. I don't love networking. I've gotten good at it over the years because I've practiced. And so if you think you're an introvert, I think you just need to say, how important is this to you? And it doesn't really matter if you're an introvert. You just practice a little bit more. And at some point, you just got to jump and go for it. If you're stalling and not sure why, is it fear of failure? Many entrepreneurs are introverts, many investors are introverts. I think it just means maybe you have to practice a little bit more, but there's no reason that should stop you. And you can't let it stop you. You got to overcome it one way or the other. And I think a big part of that is just deciding that's not going to be a thing, right? So it doesn't matter that I'm an introvert. I can still do this. It's just that simple. And then maybe practicing. And I think identifying like, why am I so nervous? Is it because I haven't practiced? Is it because I'm afraid of putting it out there because I'm going to get a no. Well, getting no's is part of the deal. Like you want no's. You celebrate the no's. At least you got to answer. So yeah, I don't think it matters that you're an introvert or not.
Uh, so what would you say for people who it's their first time raising capital? What would you say to them? What would be some uh, nuggets that you have for them?
Yeah, I think if it's your first time raising capital, I guess, from a technical opportunity deck standpoint, make sure you're realistic and that you really do want to raise capital. I think there's a lot of hype around doing that, but why are you doing what you're doing? Did you start this company? Are you trying to start this company because you want more time freedom? Because if so, and if you go get investors, guess what? You're working for your investors. Now you have a new boss. It's your investors. You're not working for yourself. You are working to make them a return and to get their money back. So why do you want to raise money? I think it's something that is really, really important. Is there a path for you to get profitable without going to investors? Typically, investors should really, in my opinion, be kind of a last resort. Like, okay, can you work a job and keep building your company on the side? There's no easy button for starting your own company. There's hustle required one way or the other. And, I think that you really, and to the point of your podcast here about lifestyle, when you start working for investors, it is getting better now. There is more acceptance around work-life balance. I think 15 years ago, it was like you need to kill yourself for your startup, right? That's where I was at, and I almost did. Um, Now it is a little more accepted. I think investors recognize, yeah, a vacation's good, decompress. You don't want to, you got to stay in it for the long run. But it's still a lot of pressure when you take someone's money. So are you sure you want to raise money? If you're like, yes, this is my mission, I am not going to let anything stop me, and I need funding to grow it and to get to the next level, awesome. Like, go for it. And then I think after that, you just have to decide you're going to do it. And no matter how long it takes, and approach fundraising like a new skill set that you're going to learn because it'll help you throughout the whole life cycle of your company. Whether you raise that first round, it might be really hard, but you're probably going to want to raise a second round of funding. And it's going to be that much easier once you learn this skill set. So just go into it as, there's no way for you to know this stuff up front. We're not taught this in school. You're going to stumble a little bit in the process, but you just got to start taking action, put one foot in front of the other, start your pitch deck, get some feedback, practice your pitch, and then start building your network. So the biggest thing I could say, if you're a first time person doing this, the thing you could do right now is go into your LinkedIn every single day, just search startup investors and just start connecting with people. You don't have to DM them, you don't have to say anything. Just start connecting and building up your network of people who are potential investors in your LinkedIn profile. And make sure your profile is set up, showing the business that you're doing, that kind of thing. And start posting, marketing yourself and your company on LinkedIn. And then when you're ready to actually go ask for the money, you've got people there who've seen your posts come up, they've seen your content, there's some familiarity. You've turned what is a cold connection into a potential warm, connection. So I think that's something you can do right away because that network is really important.
They say sometimes be careful who you take money from, because sometimes it might not be a good match. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I'd say definitely. I mean, again, this is someone you're going to be working with most likely. Some investors are completely hands off, but chances are when you hit some bumps in the road, which you will, they're probably going to jump back in. And I did say no to a couple people who were going to give me money. And I was like, oh man, this is not a good fit. Like, definitely, I do not want to deal with this guy long term. So I do think, even though sometimes you are in that point where you feel so desperate, you would take money from, an alien, I always say. You do want to try to be strategic and take money from people who are going to be supportive. I would also say you do not want to take money from anybody who cannot afford to lose it. So the one thing I'm really thankful, I didn't take money from, friends or family, my the people who like have their grandmother mortgage their house to fund their startup. Like, don't do that, right? There's plenty of people, there's tons of people with money out there. They need write-offs. They need to spend their money to get tax, write-offs. And they want to support, good people doing cool things. There's tons of money out there. You just got to put it out there and find those people. And you'll be much happier that you took money from someone who can afford to lose it, because when you do hit those bumps in the road, you don't need that pressure of, a friend or family member who gave you their life savings. That's not a good place to be.
What would you say to female entrepreneurs? People, they might not be entrepreneurs right now at the moment. They might not have a business, but they have an idea to start a business. What would you say to them?
I would say go for it. I think that entrepreneurship is not easy, but man, it is, I don't know, to me, the benefits to me are security. Like now that I've started multiple businesses and my husband's the same way, and we started over financially after that company. And we built up our wealth very quickly and stronger than before because now we know how to start businesses and how to make money. So it's a skill set that can benefit you your whole life. Even if you just start something on the side, if it doesn't work out, start something else. So just getting started. And I think where the world is at right now, unfortunately, it's really hard to get ahead off of just a regular salary these days. And I think I have a 9-year-old, almost 9-year-old son. And who knows where the world is going to be at, right, in 10, 15, 20 years. And I think having the ability to find opportunity, start businesses, it's such a amazing example to set for your kids if you have kids. And if you don't have kids, it's just an incredible skill set to learn, to leverage over the rest of your life. And I love, we have like multiple streams of income. If one business, slumps a little bit, we know another one we can put more effort into and build it up. So to me, there's more security in having your own businesses than me just like working a job and being at the mercy of, getting laid off and can I find another job? So I say go for it. And I think being female does not matter. Yes, there are definitely mostly male investors for sure, but I never let that stop me. I'm 5 feet 1 inch, and I would walk into these investor meetings and I just didn't let it hold me back. I think there were instances, where I've had investors say things to me that were completely inappropriate, but it's unfortunate, but it just is what it is, and you just push forward. So.
Speaking about kids, sometimes that could hold people back. So they might say, well, I have my kids, I have work, so how can I pull this off?
Yeah, I think again, it takes a little bit of, grit. It's like, what are you spending time on right now? The hospitality business that I started, I woke up at 4 a.m. I had a, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and I woke up at 4 a.m. almost every day and put 2 hours into the business before he woke up to get it started, to build it. So I think you just got to, I don't really spend much time on social media. I don't really listen and read the news. So I think it's just as important what do you not do versus, what do you do? Because I think it's all about just making the time. And kids are demanding. I only have one. I don't know how people do it with three. Um, but even with one, it's tough. It's a balancing act, and I want to be there for him. That's why to your point of your podcast lifestyle, I have now chosen a business that allows me to be present when I need to and when I want to with him. So I think if you do have kids, choose something that's going to allow you to have the lifestyle that you want. And just know there's going to be, the building phase. I always say, like when you're growing, there's going to be some crunch times, right? But then relax a little bit. You have a couple months that are, less crazy, and then you might have a crazy couple months after that. But yeah, it's not easy with kids, but it's worth it and it's still doable. I think you just really have to look at how you're spending your time and how can you rearrange your schedule to make time for it.
Where can people learn more about you and follow you?
So LinkedIn, Jayla Siciliano, and then seedmoneypodcast.com. I started a podcast about a year and a half ago just to help early stage entrepreneurs with the fundraising process because so much of the content out there is from venture capitalists, and I think they glaze over the human side of what it takes to raise money, and a lot of times they make it sound really intimidating and like this, mystery. And so I started the podcast just to try to break it down for people and help people. And I'll do, free 30, if you need someone to pitch to, a free 30-minute session where you can send me your pitch deck. I'll give you feedback and you can pitch and I'll give you feedback just as a third party if needed. So